So, very good evening, doctors. I'm Dr. Stalin on behalf of Shield Healthcare, welcoming you all for today's webinar. So, the topic for today's webinar is understanding microbiome, pre and probiotic in infertility and early conception. I welcome all the participants and I request you to post your queries in the comment box so that we can have a short interaction with the speaker at the end of the presentation. And now it's time to introduce our invited speaker for the day. So we have Dr. Sadhana Gupta, ma'am. Madam is currently the director and senior consultant, Department of OG, Jeevan Jyoti Hospital and Medical Research Center, Jeevan Jyoti Advanced Infertility Center. And Madam is the FOXY representative to South Asian Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecology 2018-2020. Madam is the ICOG Governing Council member 2015-2020. And Madam is also the corresponding editor of Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology India and SAFOG. And Madam has held several positions like Madam is the vice president of FOXY 2016 and chairperson UP chapter ISAR 2017-2019. And with this, Madam has authored more than 20 research publications. Madam is also a author for various textbooks published by JP and Magra publications. We welcome you, ma'am. Ma'am, before going to session, we would like to play a 1-minute video of our Shield Connect webpage, ma'am. So Venkatesan sir will play a 1-minute video of our Shield Connect webpage.
So should I start, Mr. Venkatesh? Okay.
Just a minute, ma'am.
Okay.
Stalin sir, just explain sir, about the page.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I have unmuted, sir. Okay. So, ma'am, sorry, ma'am. So, Shield Connect is our new initiative of Shield Healthcare, ma'am, and it has blogs from our experts on women's healthcare, and we also have a separate page for our webinars, ma'am. So you can find the informations of our past and present webinars. So this is our webinar page. You can see the details of our upcoming and the past webinars, ma'am. And we have also a separate page for PCOS awareness program. That is, you can see short videos on PCOS detailed by various doctors in their regional languages. So you can find various videos in our website, ma'am, and you can see a separate page for our leaders. You can see more than 220 experts supporting our web page through their webinars and their resource materials in our available in our website, ma'am. I request the participants to go through our web page and make use of it, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Now we can start your presentation.
Thank you. It was lovely video, and what close to nature and how the nature and the technology is going hand to hand. And let's hope that we are together and we are not contradictory, we are always complementary. So a lovely video, and thanks again, Shield, for this opportunity to connect me to OB-GYN across the India and maybe outside India. So today's topic is a little bit different, and it is understanding of pre and probiotics in infertility and conception. It's about me, and I bring greeting to all participants from FOXI, ICOG, CEPHOG, as well as Journal OB-GYN India. So what is the thing? The thing is insignificant in this universe. And this last decade has brought enormous insight into the composition of human microbiome. What are microbiome? We don't see them with our eyes. We don't feel them. We cannot palpate. We cannot see on ultrasound and imaging technology. And that's the thing, that microbiome are defined as the genomic content of microbial communities that reside in and on human bodies. And human microbia, which we inherit, which we have on our body, in our body, is considered to contribute to our blueprint for health and disease over the lifetime. And the human commensal microbiome, which is referred to as other human genome, it has always coexisted and evolved with the human genome to help and maintain human health. So human microbiome is something we have to have it understanding in last few years with the advent of genomic technology, and it has actually opened a new dimension to understand health in a totality. So the human body is a home to an extraordinary diverse population of microbes, and as unearthed by human microbiome projects, there exists intriguing pattern of microbial coexistence. And when this coexistence is breached, it is broken, it leads to disease in many, many situations. Microbial dysbiosis and invasion of pathogen can lead to disease and sometimes life-threatening situations. So what is the power of visible? Today we know that microbial gene in human gut alone constitute 3.3 million, which outnumber totally our protein coding genes, which numbers 20,000 to 50,000 of human genome. The extraordinary power of genomic technologies has convincingly demonstrated that under natural conditions, microbiome occur in the community, in the consortium, where the interaction among different members cumulatively result in system-level community behavior, which is more than a mere addition of their behavior together. So it actually reflects the beautiful fact that we have the different qualities, but when we work as a together, when we work in a harmonious environment, we produce a different result. And a vast spectrum of research is ongoing nowadays to uncover the constitution and basic of microbial ecosystem in many variety of environmental and biological systems. And today, in next 40 to 50 minutes, we will be joining the journey to unravel this power of invisible power of microbiomes and how this understanding can go a long way in solving many, many problems, especially reproductive problems. So it is what I said, it is 3.3 billion microbes in the intestine, which actually cause most of digestion after stomach and the upper ileum. And they cause a lot of, when there is dysbiosis, there causes a lot of problems with us. Humans have always co-evolved with trillions of microorganisms which inhabit the body in a complex habitat-specific manner and are attuned to factors related to host physiology, age, diet, our environmental condition, and history of exposure to microbes. You must be wondering that as an obstetrical gynecologist, why we want to know, why we need to know about microbes. There are pretty good reasons for this. The association of microbes with various reproductive complications has been suspected even before the first success of IVF. When the people were struggling with the reproductive function and they are struggling with the continuous failure of IVF, even then it was thought that the microbes dysbiosis can be a cause of the infertility in many situations. But we don't have the technology at that time, and many situations, many hypotheses remains unexplained. Till now, with the genetic imprint technology, we have understood that what is the characterization of microbiome in the reproductive tract. And now the research has opened these facts that human reproduction, almost all aspects from gametogenesis to fertilization, embryo migration, to implantation, with implication in early pregnancy failure or loss, and poor obstetrical outcome during gestation and parturition in terms of preterm labor or intrauterine infection are affected by resident microbiota. Now, this is the reason which has drawn the deep interest of obstetrician and gynecologists to this opening research and this opening knowledge. Urogenital tract microbiome, which we deal with in our day-to-day clinical practice, it makes up 9% of total human microbiome. And colonization of microbes in the human body commences just after delivery. When newborn comes in contact with maternal womb, vagina, fecal and skin microbes, it triggers the postnatal immunity which neonates actually have after this colonization. And there has been research that the cesarean born babies sometimes don't have these microbiomes and they have the lower immunity to infection. So this is the other way which is actually opening up that how the babies have got the recurrent infection and why the few babies don't have these infections. Now, we tend to know from our all the clinical knowledge of the vaginal discharge, leukorrhea, and so many cervical pathology that microorganisms are present in vagina. Sometimes they are friendly, sometimes they are not friendly. But in last years, we have come to know that even upper female reproductive system, which include ovary, fallopian tubes, uterus, and endometrium, is also having some microbiomes. And when we don't have the healthy microbiomes, it can result into many pregnancy complications. So with this basic knowledge of microbiome, what they are, how they are important to human beings, and how they play a role in reproductive functions and dysfunctions, we must understand what is the concept of pre and probiotics. Pre and probiotics, the concept was first introduced in 20th century by Nobel Prize winner Eli McIncock, and he suggested that a long and healthy life of Bulgarian peasants resulted from their consumption of fermented milk products. He himself used the milk product, sour milk fermented with bacteria, and which supposed that improved his health. And he proposed the theory that consumption of fermenting food products positively influenced the microflora of the colon, decrease toxic microbial activity, decrease intestinal pH, and suppress growth of proteolytic bacteria. And this theory has been revived by Gibson and Robert Ford in 1995. So what is prebiotic? They are non-digestible food ingredients. They are present in our food, which beneficially affect the host by selectively stimulating the growth or activity of one or limited number of bacteria in colon that can improve host health. Properties of prebiotic are limited hydrolysis and absorption in upper GIT. They selectively stimulate the growth of beneficial bacteria. They are immunostimulant and they stimulate bacterial flora that promotes colonization resistance, so they prevent the recurrent intestinal infection. Prebiotics are also alternative for probiotic or their cofactors. And with this people's knowledge that when we have diarrhea, we always say use curd, use salty fruits, and this is a sort of prebiotic. How do they work? Prebiotic increase the number of bifidobacterium and lactic acid bacteria, which is a friendly bacteria, effect on metabolism of lipid, suppression of putrefactive bacteria, growth of bifidobacteria, and it also helps to lower the colon cancer risk. So the use of prebiotic is improving immune function, a good balance of good bacteria, promote regular bowel movement. They suppress appetite, so they have a good satiety, and it finally result in the reduction of obesity because it has got a good satiety factor, reduces intestinal infection, increase in mineral absorption and improvement of bone health, energy metabolism and satiety, and initiation after birth and regulation modulation of immune function. So you see what a lot of non-communicable disease which our India and the South Asia region is struggling is the obesity, it is the osteoporosis, it is the cancers. And these prebiotics, when are used with knowledge and with alertness, actually they can go a long way in improving the health of our community in our region. Now coming to probiotic. Probiotic is the combination of Greek word pro means promoting and biotic meaning life. The Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations defines probiotic as live microorganisms which when administered in adequate amount produce beneficial effect to host when taken orally. So they can be in form of any drug. It is not a food. We have to administer it. We have to take in our body. These are few probiotics, that is the lactobacilli and the bifidobacterium tops the list, and few fungi and the yeast. Lactobacillus, what are they? There are more than 50 species of lactobacilli, and fermented food have got these bacilli in their constitution, and it helps in preventing yeast infection, UTI, irritable bowel syndrome, traveler diarrhea, diarrhea resulting from Clostridium species, treating lactose intolerance and the skin disorder, as well as prevention of respiratory infection. Bifidobacteria are also 30 species and they are found in intestinal tract, and again they are beneficial in many bowel functions. So what are the properties of probiotic? We must, like whenever we take the probiotic in any form, it should be always safe to the host. It should not produce any pathogenic or toxic effect. It must be resistant to hydrochloric acid, bile and pancreatic juice, so it doesn't get destroyed in the upper GIT. Anti-carcinogenic, lactic acid production. It should have the retained viability during storage and use, and that is very important, that the good storage capacity of these probiotics should be there, and it should stimulate the immune system and ability to colonize the GIT tract. How do they work? This is very important. It is something of mystery which we are started to solve in last 5 to 10 years. They interfere with treatment and prevention of intestinal adhesion, immune booster, reducing cholesterol. They produce antimicrobial substance, interfere in cancer prevention, and they deliver vitamins for the organism. They synthesize like thiamine, riboflavin, and the pyridoxine. So this is one way that how they compete for adhesion receptor or of site, the presence of some bacteria that we have to understand in the intestinal tract is dependent on their ability to adhere to gut epithelium, such they become immobilized on the gut wall and resist being flushed out by peristalsis. So they provide a competitive side, they adhere to intestinal epithelium and they don't allow the pathogenic bacteria to adhere. They stimulate immunity and they degrade toxic repertoire. Understanding that much about prebiotic and probiotic and how they evolve, let's to come to our field, that is vaginal ecosystem. And vaginal ecosystem is as complete and as comprehensive as you are seeing in this beautiful scenario. And this is the mystery of nature. So vaginal microenvironment is a dynamic ecosystem with major capability of maintaining healthy reproductive environment. And we have lactobacillus species and non-lactobacillus species. And we have found till now around 250 bacterial taxonomic units. It is affected by many factors. Age is one, body mass index is another, mating behavior, what is the sexual practices, and what are the other microbes they inhabit. They mainly reside in the stratum corneum, which is cornified epithelium that forms loose glycogen-filled cells without nuclei, and thereby they fail to recognize the foreign pathogens. As we see all screening program, we use this Lugol iodine test, which takes the glycogen, it is healthy, and this is it. So a dynamic equilibrium exists in the vaginal ecosystem between epithelium, between normal colonizing organisms, which is mostly lactobacillus species, local secretory and cellular immune factor. And with this combination, in reproductive life, the vaginal pH is maintained at 3.8 to 4.2, that is acidic environment, which creates unfavorable environment for pathogens. So from our undergraduate days, we know that how the urogenital, upper genital tract infection is prevented by the acidic pH and by the cervical plug and the lactobacilli. So what are the lactobacilli? As a OB/GYN clinician, we may not be knowing a little bit microbiology, but it is the time to have some knowledge about this, that the Lactobacillus crispatus and inners are the main producer of lactic acid, and they are responsible for maintaining an acidic environment. Second thing is the estrogen. When there is a good estrogen, like in reproductive period, or in pregnancy, it converts columnar epithelium into thick layer of stratified squamous epithelium, and that causes increased glycogen content. And when there is a estrogen-induced increased glycogen content, it induces the growth of lactobacilli. Due to lower dominance of lactobacilli, when the girl is before reproductive age, premenarchal, the vaginal pH is neutral or alkaline. And when there is acidic pH, it prevents the growth of various pathogens like gonorrhea, molluscum, as well as the HIV. So lactobacilli gram-positive rods present in almost 100% of women with normal flora, affect adherence of epithelial cell, protect against infection, and it is a dominant community which is generally considered beneficial. When we have the lactobacillus dominant community flora, it is considered a beneficial and healthy macroenvironment is produced because they reduce inflammation and susceptibility to infection with pathogens. Lactobacillus crispatus produce the highest level of lactic acid among lactobacilli. And in contrast, the lactobacillus inners communities are frequently unstable and commonly associated with few anaerobic microbes like Gardnerella or Ureaplasma. There are other organisms as well. These are the good ones, and the facultative organisms can be diphtheroid, E. coli, mycoplasma, anaerobic organism, which is usually present in low and non-pathogenic concentration. So this is a picture which shows that when in the infant acidic pH is there, and we have the lactobacilli and other organisms, pre-puberty neutral pH, and we have the another, we don't have lactobacilli that much. And sometimes when the girl comes to us with so many complaints of repeated vaginal discharge, please be assured that providing probiotic to them can help their problem, because we think that it is not infection. Sometimes we say it is a psycho girl and she is again coming, and we advise for hygiene. But do consider the possibility of altered microbiome as well as in these prepubertal girls. In puberty, again acidic pH, and we have got the lactobacilli and few facultative and anaerobic bacteria. And menopause is again the life circle is full, and again we have got the neutral pH, and again menopause comes with the atrophic vaginitis. It is one of the most common complaint with which the menopausal woman comes to is, and one of the major cause of these menopausal vaginal discharge is the altered vaginal ecosystem, and addition of probiotics actually has opened up the new avenue of treatment and the management of these girls as well as the postmenopausal women. Estrogen, again, what I have already said, increase epithelial glycogen, which itself stimulates the lactobacilli producing, and aggravating factor when we have the abnormal pH, it is beside pre-puberty and the menopause, there can be trauma, menstruation, seminal fluid, altering vaginal ecosystem, which cause the epithelial disformation. So the endogenous factors are that it is like they are the live things. So what we say that we are all live. So everything is changing every moment. And so these microbiome systems, they always change from childhood to menopause. In menstruation, non-lactobacillus species increase in number because of the alkalinity. During pregnancy, again, there is a lactobacillus dominant microbiota is strengthened by increased estrogen level. But there can be, because of high glucose glycogen level, there can be incidence of vulvovaginal candidiasis, which again we see so often in pregnant women. Patient is always coming with the discharge and we see it is leaking or what it is. My advice to all participants, do a pervaginal examination and see what sort of discharge it is. It is bacterial vaginosis or it is a candidiasis, because the management line of everything is totally different. And again, as menopause, I say the vaginal pH is increased. So estrogen has got a decisive effect on the composition of the lower genital tract microbiome. This is the summary what I have said, that there can be the age-related changes, pregnancy-related changes, and of course, there can be atrophic vaginitis, bacterial vaginosis, which we are going to take in detail, and our habits like ethnic groups and the smoking and other things also affect the vaginal microbiome. So this is one, again, an important concept that we have to understand. There are 4 types of community state type of microbiome. From 4 is the high diversity facultative anaerobic bacteria, which is not good. And 1 is the lactobacilli crispatus dominated area, which is good. When we have got a 3 or 4 type of microbiome system, we have inflammation, we have more sexually transmitted infection, including HIV, and or we are always think of from COVID to HIV to all the things, what we say, why few people get infection and why few people don't get infection. Immunity and the microbiome constitution actually plays the role in deciding that which people are prevented for getting infection and which people got the actual infection. So CST 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the new terminology in our OB-GYN practice, that communities, the consortium of vaginal microbiome, it is 4, it is a highly diverse, it is not with the good bacteria, and CS1 is the lactobacilli dominated, which actually prevent a lot of infection. So this is one terminology which should be in our day-to-day practice. It is CST1 or CST2 or CST3 or 4. So CST1 is associated with lactobacillus dominant, and lactobacillus crispatus is one of the very important and very friendly bacteria which actually increases lactic acid, and few others. There are, as I say, there are more than 50 varieties of it. Ethnicity is very, very important because we are diverse. We live in different temperature. We eat a different food. We breathe different air. And this is a very important study which shows that different ethnicity people have got the different flora. And the few peoples are like this crispatus dominated and few people don't have. And that will also play when we select the drug, we see that which flora is beneficial in that particular ethnicity. So this is very, very important. Microbial dysbiosis. Now, with understanding that much, what is dysbiosis? It is regarded when one of the major factors leading to various types of reproductive disease and condition is disturbed. It is referred to alteration of normal microbiome, and cause can be many. You have stressed out, you are having chronic disease, you have undergone any medical procedure like medical termination of pregnancy, you have used antibiotics for any reason, and that caused the dysbiosis. We all know that every patient with antibiotic, the first what side effect is nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. And what causes that nausea, vomiting, diarrhea? No, it is not acidity. It is the dysbiosis caused by antibiotic which cause these symptoms, which sometimes are very resistant to treat, and sometimes we are reluctant to deal with them. They say always you come with that problem and you have to take this thing. Microbial dysbiosis, particularly in vagina, is also associated with infertility and preterm birth, and that is our concern for it, that in infertility, this microbial dysbiosis plays a very, very important role. And with the new concept, we are like struggling with endometriosis, and we are having the most educational program number on endometriosis. So many theories now that dysbiosis is also suggested important contributor to endometriosis as well as the spontaneous abortion, that is pregnancy loss. And annually it is estimated what is the magnitude of women affected. 1 million women around the world suffer from non-sexually transmitted urogenital infection, including bacterial vaginosis, UTI, and yeast vaginitis. Most patients respond to antimicrobial treatment, but we all know with our experience that patient comes with recurrent UTI, with recurrent discharge, with recurrent symptom, and we are sometimes lost in our approach, and we have to have the different approach. Now coming to bacterial vaginosis, which is a very simple and which can be very difficult as well, and affect 6% to 50% in different population, considered to be mild disease, but it can have a devastating outcome like preterm labor, like reproductive tract infection, like sometimes stillbirth, unexplained pregnancy loss. And it can cause the critical health issue in the obstetrics like chorioamnitis. Now, women in reproductive age are at higher risk of getting infected with bacterial vaginosis because of practicing unprotected intercourse and the douching, multiple sex partner, lifestyle factors like smoking. They all contribute to increased incidence of bacterial vaginosis. It occurs at higher pH, which we know all, with more alkaline vaginal condition due to many things, which causes the numerous colonies of anaerobic bacteria in vagina to develop, which is reported also in the postmenopausal women. So lactobacilli, what is bacterial vaginosis? It is only dysbiosis. We don't have lactobacilli, and the enemy bacteria, gram-negative, and the other anaerobic bacteria flourish. And how they produce preterm labor? They activate matrix meloproteinase and hyaluronidase by pathogenic microbes, which lead to breakdown of the collagen layer of cervical epithelium, and then the cascade of the preterm parturition syndrome start, that is activation of cytokine, prostaglandin, and there is preterm labor. In developing world, especially the infections are the cause. These infections are caused to be most important contributor to preterm birth. So these are all bacterial vaginosis risk factor: dysbiosis, menstruation, sexual activity, too much douching, which many times now people do, especially in educated class, antibiotic exposure, and the healthy microbiota is disturbed. So all these risk factors we have already summarized. They can have in sexually active women, and they can also have in non-sexually active women. And the sequelae, as we say, increased risk of the sexually transmitted infection like HSV, HIV, which is actually related to our immunity, who get COVID or not COVID. That is all immunity we have learned in this last year, and it actually applies to everything, every disease. We have early loss after IVF. We will take it a little in detail. Recurrent PID and associated with PID and postpartum endometritis. This is the obstetrical sepsis, which is again a very crucial issue, and it can cause dicey problem to the life-threatening situation. It is always said to be silent killer, and the altered microbiosis can be the cause of it. As this graph shows, more bacterial vaginosis, there is a sharp loss of lactobacillus bacteria. Now, leading to diagnostic criteria. Once upon a time in our medical college, we have the microscope in our OPD and we used to see it is trichomonas and it is this is 10% QH and it produces the fishy odor, which is still standard criteria for the diagnosis. Now we have got the NAT technology. We have the bacterial technology, that is the culturing gram-positive route, and what is 1, 2, 3 when we have a good lactobacilli, it is good score. When we don't have lactobacilli, it is poor score. You can have the culture like organism micropetae. If you have the lactobacilli culture, it is good score, but we don't have you have the diverse bacteria, it is the bad score. So there are limitations for every test, and most often we always usually depend on our clinical sense. And these are all the things which we have said, that the simple disease, mild disease, but it can cause infertility, preterm labor, implantation, early failure, recurrent loss, and the cancer risk. So the conventional treatment was the oral or intravaginal antibiotic, which we all know. But now the addition, what we have, the new thing, that is oral or vaginal probiotic with lactobacilli has shown to increase number of lactobacilli, which produces a mechanical barrier against Gardnerella vaginalis and prevent addition of pathogen to vaginal epithelium. Antibiotic, what antibiotic do? They reduce pathogenic flora. They kill it. But what probiotic do? They suppress the pathogen they don't only suppress the pathogen, they re-establish the vaginal homeostasis. And that's why the recurrence rate is much low if we add the prescription along with the probiotic. So these are meta-analysis which show that the initial treatment with only probiotic is also very, very effective, or it can be added or followed by antibiotic regimen. So use of probiotic was meant to consolidate the efficacy of antibiotic and prevent recurrence of bacterial vaginosis, which again I say they don't only suppress the pathogenic bacteria, they actually colonize the vaginal flora through providing the good microbiome system. So these are the studies which you show, it is always the diamond diagram, and you show that both studies show a strong diamond in favor of probiotics in the reduction of recurrence of bacterial vaginosis. So it is constitute a natural route of colonization. And one thing is important, that vaginal or oral. Actually, vaginal administration allow direct and targeted colonization. And the oral is also effective because they come naturally commensal from the rectum to vagina to the bladder. So it constitutes a natural route of colonization. So this is all about the different variety of the lactoacids, and it has to be administered in a good number, that is around 10 to power 8 colony per unit. And longer period of probiotic administration may be useful for long-term control of bacterial vaginosis reflux after conventional therapy with metronidazole. So what we are struggling is the recurrence. And probiotic has been added to reduce this recurrence of this thing, bacterial vaginosis. Cytolytic vaginosis is another thing, and it is it is the other extreme of the thing. There is a more estrogen, like in pregnancy or sometime in diabetic patient, there is lactobacilli overgrowth, which cause epithelial cell lysis, which result in itching, irritation, burning, inflammation, vulvodynia, dysuria, dyspareunia, and patients suffering from diabetes, as I say. And actually, what we say in our clinical experience, we tend to see them, they are the psychological and so many antidepressant drugs we see, but we have to understand that it is the alteration of vaginal microbiome. Vulvovaginal candidiasis is another important, very, very common thing when we have the lower vaginal pH value. So, you know, nature is a balance. If we have it is a very fine balance. It is not a crude balance. If we have the alkaline pH, we have the bacterial vaginosis. If we have the lower pH value, we have the candidiasis. We have the cytolytic vaginitis. And the clinician role is to understand things. Do a perispeculum examination, do whatever test, microscopy test, if you have the facility of, but we have to understand that altered microbiome, that is dysbiosis, is the cause. It may be overbalance, it may be high pH, it may be the lower. Standard chart, what we do in the differential diagnosis when there is discharge, how bacterial vaginosis, candidiasis and trichomonosis look. As a OB-GYN, we are quite aware of it. And it is the picture just to strengthen our memory that bacterial vaginosis is a fishy homogeneous discharge, which is having the fishy odor. Candidiasis, you have the curdy itching, which is adhered to vaginal wall, and trichomonosis is yellow frothy discharge. And if you have this practice, though we have forgotten the keeping microscope, we can take a vaginal swab, endocervical swab, and see from our eyes that what is the organism, and actually tailor our management plan. So this is the dominant bacteria of unhealthy. It is not Lactobacillus, Gardnerella, E. coli, Streptococcus, so many things. And this is the picture which shows that how this simple bacterial vaginosis or dysbiosis cause initiation of inflammatory cascade, arachidonic acid, inflammatory cytokines, which finally lead to prostaglandin and preterm labor. And when we add probiotics, there is the prevention of all these things. It enhances IL-10 and CF3 production, which are the favorable thing, and it helps in reduction of ultimate preterm labor. UTI in women, we always say UTI in women. Women are always susceptible to urinary tract infection. It is almost 1 billion each year and more than 300 billion cases annually worldwide. One of the very important complaints in our gynae OPD. And we know that UTI can cause preterm birth, it can cause intrauterine growth retardation, and to the mother, it can cause pyelonephritis or the chronic renal failure if not treated well. Uropathogenic E. coli, Enterobacter, Staphylococcus, and we always have the issue of increasing drug resistance among uropathogenesis. So these are the three things: UTI, bacterial vaginosis, cytolytic, and yeast vaginitis. And issue and concern are that what is we are understanding that the pathogen, we say that it is from the blood to come to the urinary tract or from the vaginal flora to the upper side, but upper reproductive tract. But the pathogens can ascend from rectum to vagina and then bladder. And this process is mediated by bacterial adherence and not altered by antibiotic use. And that is the thing which we are struggling. So many antibiotics, from conventional nitrofurantoin to one sachet therapy, we are actually struggling, and women comes to us again and again with the problem of UTI and repeated culture positive. So it is not an hygiene issue, but indeed the fact that normal vaginal microflora also colonize from the intestinal origin, and the microbial ascension per se is a natural process that can actually help the host or may harm the host. So this is a beautiful picture which shows that non-pathogenic lactobacilli emerge from gut to colonize vagina and provide protection. But when we have the pathogenic E. coli and gram-positive, they go to infect the vagina and have the UTI. And that's why usually what we say, the GIT symptom and increased frequencies, like all symptoms go hand in hand. So role of pre and probiotic in pregnancy, they are prebiotic from natural source, and what is how it affects, it also relieves the constipation in pregnant women, which is again a very important and immune booster, as we know. Preterm birth has presented a major challenge, and India contributes to 15% of total preterm birth load. And irony is this, that as a country, majority of our population don't have access to good neonatal care. So this is very, very important area where obstetrician gynecologists can contribute to our neonatal health and the health of next generation. And how these pre and probiotics, good treatment, good diagnosis can actually cause the long-term health to every individual. This is our way to contribute to these things, to this public health problem. So administration of lactobacilli in GRI and RC14 in pregnant women restore normal vaginal flora and interrupt infectious and inflammatory process, what we have learned just now. There is a growing evidence that probiotic can reduce preterm birth. Now, one very important and very interesting finding, which our new studies from the Karakkopalam, that is 2019 paper, that reduction of pre-eclampsia is an additional benefit in prebiotic dose. if it is repeated in third trimester of pregnancy, because it says that it caused the different inflammatory and anti-angiogenic factor, which is the cause of the defective trophoblastic invasion. And it has also been studied that when the patient is having recurrent pregnancy loss and we are using cervical circulage, addition of probiotic can be very, very helpful, as well as in the woman with the bad obstetrical history. Now, coming to this part from pregnancy, preterm labor, IVF does microbiome matters. So IVF is a costly technology. People pay in our country usually out of their packets. Doctors are also under very financial pressure and to produce the result. Does microbiome matters in the IVF success and the failure? We know all this, that the abnormal vaginal microbiota is associated with tubal factor infertility. We have the white tubes are blocked because of the infection. Whatever it is the cause, it is tuberculosis, it is chlamydia, it is the other microorganisms, and the microbiota and its metabolite might associated with every step of IVF, including gamete formation, implantation, and delivery. And what the studies have shown that we are facing what? We have good follicle, we have good embryo, but there is a recurrent implantation failure. Vaginal microbiota is associated with many female reproductive disease like STD, tubal factor infertility, and the first trimester miscarriage. And they are also related to recurrent implantation failure. So what we see when on the embryo catheter, if we find some pathology, some bacteria that causes the, like predicts that the pregnancy might be failed, it will be unable to implant. In endometriosis, again, as I say that the altered microbiome also contribute to endometriosis, which cause the new indication of neoplastic potential together with activation of immune and inflammatory pathways. So the recent research have actually opened a window, a totally different window, totally different dimension of IVF. And we see that if the bacterial microbiome in vagina, in endometrium, in follicular fluid is lactobacillus dependent, dominant, we have a good success rate. While we have the other specific microbes beside lactobacillus, it causes implantation failure or miscarriage rate. Semen also have got the specific microbiome, and we can say that it is in combination semen vaginal microbiome, but still to whatever study, the vaginal microbiome matters more. And this is again the thing that we, since a long time, we thought that the microbiomes are only in vagina, but the studies have proven that they are also in the upper genital tract. So this is very, very important knowledge. And lactobacilli produce bacteriocin, which have the potential to inhibit bacterial growth and physically prevent other bacteria from binding to epithelial surfaces. Different species of lactobacilli have different immunological properties, and it is for the microbiology and the genomic technology to develop. Till now, what we know that the Lactobacillus crispatus is the major dominant, plays a good role in protection against pathogens. And with the presence of Lactobacillus iners, which is the second important, it can cause altered gene expression, including defense against bacteriophage and associated with presence of bacterial vaginosis. So two bacteria, they have the different action and the different line of different effect on the microbiomes. The rapidly dividing blastocyst. Now we have the blastocyst culture on the, we do the transfer. Now blastocyst is a very energy consuming phase of the human zygote. They depend heavily on aerobic lysosis, which is characterized by formation of lactate. This high level of aerobic glycolysis has been explained as an energy provision for the energy consuming dividing blastocyst. It is a 5-cell blastocyst, but actually it is rapidly dividing. And what environment it has got, that plays a role. If we have the lactate-rich microenvironment, it will enable local endometrial breakdown, facilitate invasion, and modulate the local immune response. So there is prevention of rejection of semi-allogenic embryo. So many things we are doing for endometrial receptivity, we are doing frozen embryo transfer, so many things we are doing. But what can be the additional cause? That is the altered microbiome flora. And we have to understand in the coming times that how we can improvise the result of IVF by using this knowledge and this addition to our treatment. So there is a beneficial effect of lactobacillus within microbial community, and which can be explained, few things which can explain, and which something which we have got to know. So it supports receptivity, support invasion and acceptance of hatching and developing blastocysts. Another player involved in the microbial community are the virus, which is bacteriophage, which makes up the virome. So it is the microbiome, and it is the virome. And bacteriophage are the microbial virus that can infect bacteria, interfere with their metabolism, kill infected microbes, and allow for horizontal gene transfer, hereby actively influencing the bacterial composition of local microbiota. So we have understood the microbiomes, there are viromes also, and this knowledge is also going to change our clinical practices. So key point with this discussion is that the bacterial biomass, it is decreased from vagina to endometrium. Vagina is accessible to coital, to hygiene, to menstruation, to change in the pregnancy and the age. But to endometrium, we also have the biomes in the endometrium as well as the follicular fluid. And when it has been supported by the studies done by the laparoscopy in the women with endometriosis and adenomyosis. There has been many studies with VISE, with the genomic project, and these are all studies which shows that vaginal microbiome, what is healthy and what is unhealthy. And there are a lot of studies, and you say that all the studies are recent ones because there has been a lot of work in the last years. And what these studies say, that when we have the altered vaginal microbiota, bacterial vaginosis, which related to poor pregnancy outcome, we have a good positive outcome with ART if we have the vaginal microbiota rich in lactobacillus. And there is a prospective study by Khedor that when embryo implantation was less successful in women with reduced lactobacilli species in their vaginal microbiota. This is again study, prospective study. Abnormal vaginal microbiota may be associated with poor reproductive outcome, and that has really our concern. Endometrium, as I say, the chronic endometritis, this I will like to have a little discussion on it. This is very important. The diagnosis is subtle. And on repeated ultrasound, when we do the follicular monitoring and we say sometimes hyperechoic endometrium, sometimes we say ill-defined endometrium, it is not layered. Sometimes it is thin, sometimes it is fluid field collection. And it takes a long time to clinician to think that this patient is having chronic endometritis, which is actually making every attempt either in IVF or infertility, our patient is not able to conceive. And the prevalence of chronic endometritis in general population is 19% and can be up to 45% in infertile women. And when there is chronic endometritis, it is associated with recurrent implantation failure. And if the patient have the pregnancy, it causes early pregnancy loss. Again, it is a very subtle diagnosis, and cultures are not routinely performed because sometimes we don't have any culture report, because all microorganisms for culture are not cultivable. We don't have the anaerobic culture so many times. We don't have the culture for fungi in majority of clinical settings. So it is mostly the clinical diagnosis, and the cause may be due to altered microbiome. And the addition of probiotic can help to it. Again, I say there is one again added theory to endometriosis, that is dysbiosis. And it has shown that the people with endometriosis, when we take the fluid for biopsy, when we take the fluid for culture, we find the lactobacillus reduced environment and the dysbiosis. So genomic sequences based research has showed that the lower diversity indices with lactobacilli dominance had better outcome in IVF and during ovarian stimulation. When we have got a good gonadotropin, a high estrogen, high steroid level, it also impacts vaginal microbiome. And that's why it also adds that frozen embryo transfer gives the better result, because it is not only the supraphysiological level of steroid, it is also the normal vaginal microbiome which can prepare in the our frozen embryo cycle. So these are again studies shows that the upper genital tract microbiome may be different from lower tract, but it is not sterile. And microbiome, the upper endometrial, upper reproductive tract biome, we have till now have found around 278 genes, with Flavobacterium and Lactobacillus being the most abundant genera in patients with ongoing pregnancy. And what is the cutoff? Again, this is very, very interesting paper in 2016 from Moreno, that endometrial microbiome can be classified lactobacillus nominated or non-lactobacillus nominated. And how much we want lactobacillus nominated, that is abundant, more than 90%. And if it is less than 80% or 70%, it may result into the implantation failure or early conception loss, or sometimes what we have the biochemical pregnancy, but it gets lost in few days. So endometrial dysbiosis can be the cause of implantation failure and lead to infertility. And again, these studies emphasize that lactobacillus dominant endometrium is more receptive than an endometrium with high bacterial diversity and low proportion of lactobacilli. So very, very interesting study which we want to share with you. And human endometrial microbiota, what we say in prepubertal, postmenopausal, it is estrogen dependent. But human endometrial microbiota, first of all, it exists and it is independent of hormone regulation. And the endometrial receptivity, now it is the time to expand the evaluation of endometrial receptivity, not only at the morphological level, at molecular level, but also with the microbiological viewpoint. These are studies on fallopian tube. Again, what we emphasize that the human reproductive tract is not sterile even in upper urinary tract, and the vaginal microbiome matter more than the seminal microbiome. So again, after pregnancy, we have come to full circle. We don't want only implantation and continuous pregnancy. We want a good outcome. And this biases, again, what we have discussed, that it can result into the preterm birth or adverse obstetrical outcome, and we have to be careful about it. And again, say that the Lactobacillus crispatus dominant microbiome were associated with higher live birth rate. So better knowledge about vaginal microbiota prior to IVF may help both couples and healthcare professionals to decide on timing of their IVF cycle to maximize the result. That is the key point from the recent study from Moreno and Simon in 2019. Bacterial vaginosis, we have covered a lot, and we have already said that the community state type microbiome 4 with or without a diagnosed bacterial vaginosis has been described as a common feature of preterm birth in the Caucasian women. So you don't have the classical diagnosis of bacterial vaginosis. You may not have the Fishy order or the Clue cell, but if it is community state type microbiome form, beware that it can result into the preterm labor. It can result into the bad obstetrical outcome. To coming to the last, again, what we say, this is the thing which we as a human being, we can enjoy. As a clinician, we can learn that the human body is complete and full universe is complete. Everything is interconnected to each other. Intestinal dysbiosis, you see the patient coming always with the complaint of loose motion, more motions, stress, anxiety. And intestinal dysbiosis could have negative effect on fertility as well. And how, this is a beautiful paper which shows that induction of toxic state capable of injuring embryonic cell. And you see our IVF patient, they are so much stressed out due to financial, due to uncertainty, due to so many family pressure and so many things. And if it is intestinal dysbiosis, it can injure embryonic cell. It can reduce metabolite useful for fertilization and embryo implantation, increasing of inflammatory condition caused by cytokine. It can stimulate immune response versus embryonic condition, and treatment with pre and probiotic to treat intestinal dysbiosis also can increase the pregnancy rate in IVF affected by acute or severe intestinal dysbiosis. So this is the new knowledge which we have to be equipped with. So vaginal microbiota is important for health of whole reproductive tract and prevention of pathological infection. The vaginal microbiomes evolve during pregnancy in relation to gestational age and tend to lose diversity observed in non-pregnant women. So pregnant status is different. And again, a non-lactobacillus dominant vaginal microbiota and increased bacterial diversity during pregnancy are associated with higher risk of preterm birth. So it is in relation to IVF that IVF babies, actually we all know that IVF pregnancy is a high risk pregnancy, and the preterm birth is the most important complication of IVF pregnancy, leaving aside other thing that is the and the preeclampsia, preterm labor. These are the things because the woman is elderly. Sometimes they are already having the dysbiosis, and we want to have all but want to have a good outcome after IVF. And how this microbiome dysbiosis, understanding of dysbiosis and treating dysbiosis can improve the IVF outcome. So this is the study which shows the green arrow IVF better outcome in lactobacillus dominant microbiota. And when we have the lactobacillus diminish the microbiota, altered dysbiosis, and the community state type, 4 type of the microbiome, we have got the lower implantation rate, increased miscarriage, decreased number of term pregnancy, and reduction of pregnancy rate. Preeclampsia, again, I say that it has been shown that the bacterial infection and preeclampsia can be have the correlation, because polymicrobial community and preeclampsia is the activation of inflammatory and anti-angiogenic pathway, which lead to impaired trophoblast and endothelial dysfunction and high blood pressure. So these are all supporting studies. This is the studies from Vaughan, which compare uterine microbiome in recurrent pregnancy loss to parafertile control, and it shows the significantly higher difference when there is a lactobacillus dominant or not dominant. This is again a recent study which shows the embryonic miscarriage, that is biochemical pregnancy or very early conception loss, that the women have highly significant pregnancy loss when we have the lactobacillus deficient situation. This is again a study, alteration in vaginal flora and assisted metabolism in women with recurrent implantation failure, which again shows that the lactobacillus dominant environment play a very, very important role. Recurrent pregnancy loss, so we cover for all immunological factor, genetic factor, uterine factor, and we say 15 to 20% are unexplained, because in my practices and thrombophilia is I find very little, very, very low incidence of thrombophilia. And what is the cause of so much high incidence of recurrent pregnancy loss in our population, especially in last 10 years? And it shows, this study shows, this is 2018 study from the FEJAG, that the alteration of vaginal microbiota in patients with unexplained recurrent miscarriage can be the cause of the recurrent pregnancy loss. Again, it shows that the woman with leaky gut, what I say, the intestinal dysbiosis can also contribute to recurrent pregnancy loss. So coming to treatment, with this all understanding, which actually must have opened the new windows to your thought process, how we can use this knowledge to our day-to-day practice. This is all treatment guidelines for bacterial vaginosis, metronidazole, clindamycin, tinidazole for 24 hours, some day for 7 days, sometimes the stat treatment, and these are the conventional treatments. So you have to think about the sexual life, because in today's time, multiple sexual partner or something, these things are also very, very important. But the current treatment option add that probiotic to be added if the patient is having recurrent bacterial vaginosis, because they, when used over a long period, they are alternative to antibiotic, and they harness specific bacterial strain to prime the vaginal microbiota in pre and peri-conceptional period, what we have already discussed. So making the circle full round, what we have started, what is the concept of probiotic? It is live microorganism we administer in our body, which confer always a health benefit and no adverse effect. So it must be of human origin, acid and white stability, production of antimicrobial system, adherence to human intestinal cell, persistence in the human intestinal cell, clinically validated, integration against the clinical pathogens susceptible to antibiotic, and safety in food and clinical use. So these are all characteristic, and the prebiotic is our food product. They are inherent in our food, which induce the growth or activity of beneficial microorganisms. What prebiotic do? Again, to revise, they maintain an optimal pH in intestine, stimulate immunity, remove excess mucus from wall of small intestine, reduce formation of gas, suppress reproduction in intestine of pathogenic bacteria, stimulate peristalsis, so treat constipation, improve the work of digestive system. So rationale to develop is that it has got a clearly established protective role of lactobacilli. It can be topical and it can be oral, and it is already available in our pharmacological and armamentarium. So develop a non-chemotherapeutic probiotic therapy using lactobacilli to maintain healthy lactobacilli dominated vaginal flora, that is CST1. It reduces STDs, prevent preterm labor, good quality of life. It can be, vaginal can be inserted into vagina. Oral preparation, the physiology, it transmit, it is a natural ascension from gut to vagina and used in women prone to urogenital infection during infection, but also for healthy women to maintain normal flora. So antibiotic, what we do, whatever all people say, patients say antibiotic, oh, ye to harm karega, they are having side effect. They are right also, because they damage commensal microflora. You have no appetite after that. You have so many times after 15 days of taking antibiotic, you are not feeling good appetite. You are not feeling healthy, because they are also damaging the good microflora. They can increase occurrence of resistant bacteria, and whole world is worrying about the drug resistance among bacteria, and they can have adverse side effects. And probiotics can be used either in adjunction to antibiotic to restore the commensal microflora, and sometimes it can be the primary therapy for it. Gene specific, as we have discussed, that few slides shows that every race and every different people have got, the community have the different genome. And if we have the good Indian genome specific strain, definitely it is going to be effective, and it should be in a good number. So human vaginal microflora plays an important role in maintenance of woman health as well as her partner. There are all lactobacillus and how it is related to bacterial vaginosis, STD, and everything. So product with strains of Western origin may not have the same benefit, and the native strain will have the better efficacy on local population. So this is a very important thing to be considered. And secondly, they should be stable at the, like, they should be easy to store, because in our country we have got the temperature issue and the storage issue from the manufacturer to the chemist shop to the patient. So that is also very, very important. Right, lactobacilli, the most important is the crispatus, what we say, and the other like Janssenii, Gasseri, inners, which have got the different actions. So this, when we treat probiotic, the pregnancy rate is much more, that is 49% versus 24%. Again, it shows that the probiotic, antibiotic, how they can be joined together and they can be taken probiotic as a only treatment. So these are all evidence which is support all the studies which I have shared with you, that use of probiotic in prevention of UTI is promising. It reduces preterm birth, miscarriage, and problems in infertility, conceiving, natural conception. Dysbiosis reduces successful early pregnancy development during IVF. Abnormal vaginal microflora, women with abnormal vaginal microbiome are roughly 1.4 times less likely to have a successful pregnancy outcome. And response is species specific, and success of one species of lactobacillus in certain application does not imply that all will be benefited. So it is a little bit complicated thing to know, but we must know that the genetic, the ethical or the genetic based selection of lactobacilli is important. Amount of lactobacilli is important. Stability of lactobacilli is important. And treatment of dysbiosis actually improves obstetrical outcome. And that is to conclude. We can conclude that the dynamics of vaginal bacterial communities during whole life cycle are reflection of interplay of mutual relationship between vaginal microbiota and its human stored. So this is very important. We have to deal young girls, children, postmenopausal women and reproductive and the pregnant women in a different way. And we have to understand the importance of pH, normal microbiome, and the dysbiosis. The ever changing yet finely tuned vaginal ecosystem is a result of adaptive co-evolutionary process that integrate many different aspects. It is adaptive, it is evolution. What is the sexual hormone level? What is the host physiology? What are the comorbidity? What is the composition? What are the sexual habits? What are the other habits? That creates the vaginal microbiota. An application of modern omics technology to study a vaginal ecosystem is actually expected to translate to better diagnostic and improved personalized treatment. So we are afraid of COVID, we are afraid of bacteria and virus, and only 1 gram of total COVID has put the world in the halt. But it is time to consider as a doctor, as a human being, that microorganisms not only are enemies, but they are our allies in reproductive medicine as well as life, because everyone is friend in this universe. Thank you very much for your patient listening. And I seek your blessing, support to be with me for my candidature for FOGSI President election this year. We look forward to continued association. Thank you once again for being with me and for the patient listening.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you very much for your excellent talk, ma'am. So from your talk, we can able to understand the importance of maternal microbiome and its impact on pregnancy and fertility, ma'am. You have almost covered all the possible indications of pre and probiotics, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, and of course, with the advancement of DNA sequencing technology, yet more chances are there to explore many more new findings, ma'am. It's always an honor to hear you, ma'am. Ma'am, if you allow me, then I will read out the questions if
Sure,
any in the
sure, sure.
comment box,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes, please.
And let me wait for 1 or 2 minutes for the
Yes,
participants
yes,
to post their queries also, ma'am.
yes, please.
Ma'am, I have one question like, what is the parameter to initiate the probiotics and how long it should be given, madam? What should be the duration of your probiotic, ma'am?
Actually, first of all, the diagnosis of the initial condition, like the patient is having bacterial vaginosis or UTI, or you are not having anything, it is the hormone induced. So this is the time for thinking of probiotic. And it is usually, if the patient is having recurrent, it is 1 BD for 14 to 15 days. And if you think that the symptoms are okay, then you can give 1 OD for 10 to 15 days, which we usually give either before IVF, just before stimulation, we can start with probiotic to like balance the thing. So this is the thing which we follow, either 1 BD for 14 to 15 days or 1 OD for 14 to 15 days. I will also like to know, as a pioneer in the field of probiotic, that what you consider, because some probiotics are not heat stable and they have to be kept in fridge, and few products are temporarily they are stable. So I will also like to have your input on that issue also, as a manufacturer and as a doing work in this field.
Thank you, ma'am. And coming to the route of means the route, whether the vaginal route or the oral route, which
Actually,
one will be giving the better outcomes, ma'am?
To my practice, I have seen that the oral is quite okay, because somehow our Indian people are not that comfortable with vaginal. Vaginal is actually what we have said in the presentation, that they are locally, they are effective, and we can have that, they can have the better efficacy. But few studies also say that from rectum to vagina, it is a natural commensal, and the oral probiotic also give the good result. So in my practice, I have used much more oral and few vaginal as well, and in a way both are effective. But to considering the patient acceptance and compliance, that is one issue, because few patients are already, especially in IVF, already they are having the local progesterone, and local progesterone is a one way. I think that is also the thing which can cause the altered dysbiosis. So in those situations, adding where patient is having sometimes sildenafil also vaginally, they are having progesterone, and in those cases, the oral actually gives a good compliance rate and a quite a good result as well.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, you are saying like what the probiotics can be given along with the antibiotics, ma'am. Whether will be there any antagonist effects?
Actually, no, there has not been whatsoever studies we have gone through. It is not an antagonist. It can either, we can have in the three forms. First of all, only probiotic, and one thing is the patient is having recurrent bacterial vaginosis or recurrent UTI, you give only probiotic and it helps in reduction of recurrence. One thing. Second thing is that you have given antibiotic and you are giving adjuvant probiotic. So sometimes that also helps, especially if the patient, what I think, when the patient is having an intense like symptomology, then we can add both. And thirdly, you give antibiotic, patient is quite okay with the symptom but not fully okay, and you continue with the probiotic so that you patient doesn't have the recurrence of bacterial vaginosis. Especially women with the bad obstetrical history, we can think of giving probiotic for a long period, even for 1 to 3 months, so that there is no recurrence of bacterial vaginosis, no initiation of inflammatory cascade. So the situation is not the same. You can have primarily probiotic, you can have combination, and in sometimes antibiotic followed by the prolonged probiotic to avoid recurrence. And that is also the situation related, like a woman with the repeated bad obstetrical history, repeated infective episode, and in those cases we can give probiotic for 1 to 3 months, because as we say, the probiotic, the one important first quality is that they should not be detrimental. So they don't have any adverse effect. If they have only positive effect.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, what will be the treatment when there is any yeast infections apart from this bacterial infection, ma'am?
So
How it should be?
then you have to like cover with the antifungal agent also, always.